You should have been born a son. At least then, you'd be worth something. That was the last thing my mother-in-law said before I walked out the front door and disappeared. No one followed me. No one called after me. No one asked if I was okay. Not my husband. Not his father. Not the sister-in-law who always looked through me like I was a houseplant taking up space. We'd just finished dinner, my third Christmas with them, and I had spent the whole day cooking, setting the table, handling everything so his family wouldn't say I was useless again. And still they found something to mock. This time, my gender, like I had control over that. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just stood up, placed the dish towel on the counter, and left. Quietly, deliberately, without a scene. That was 2 years ago. No one heard from me again. I didn't plan on disappearing, not at first. I just needed space and a reason to breathe air that didn't smell like shame and performance. But when I landed in a different city and opened the laptop I'd almost left behind, I found an email, a contact, a dormant idea I'd written off as a someday dream. I replied. They responded. And within 6 months, I had a backer for the online design studio I'd been sketching out for years while everyone else called me wifey like it was a leash. 1 year later, I had 12 clients and a wait list. 18 months later, I had an LLC, 2 assistants, and an inbox of brand deals I didn't chase. I was building something, not to prove myself to them, but because I finally had the room to grow without being trimmed back. I changed my number, deleted my social media, started using my maiden name on all paperwork, and still they didn't look for me. Until the money showed up, until my name started being mentioned in articles, until my husband, ex, technically though he hadn't filed, realized I'd turned silence into structure and distance into something they couldn't reach. That's when I got the letter, a formal attempt to revisit the terms of our prenup, signed by his attorney, stuffed with the kind of language that says, she wasn't supposed to win, but I had one move left, and when I made it, they didn't speak, because they couldn't. I didn't marry into wealth. Not at first. Jacob and I met during college, late-night study groups, shared ramen, stolen kisses in hallways between exams. He was quiet, funny in a dry way, and never made me feel small. That came later. At the time, he was just a guy with secondhand jeans and big dreams in tech. I was studying design, working 2 part-time jobs, and secretly drawing logos for local bakeries to cover rent. We talked about building things together. A life, a future, maybe even a business. Then he got hired. Not just anywhere, a name brand startup with bonuses, stock options, and a fast pass into a world I'd never seen. He changed. Not overnight. Slowly. First, it was the way he laughed when I brought up freelancing, like it was cute. Then the way he introduced me at events. This is Nina, my wife. She's really creative. Not a designer, not a builder, just creative. By the time we got married, his mother had already decided I wasn't enough. Not polished enough. Not educated enough, even though we had the same degree. Not useful enough, unless I was serving coffee or running errands during their garden parties. Every family event felt like a performance review I hadn't been invited to. Every comment was a paper cut. You don't want kids yet? That's unusual. Oh, you're still doing that art thing. I always pictured Jacob with someone more put together. But the worst part? Jacob never stepped in. He never said that's enough. Never said she matters. Just stayed quiet. Let it happen. Sometimes smiled like he agreed. I stopped bringing up my ideas. Stopped correcting them when they got my job title wrong. Stopped asking Jacob to show up for me. Because deep down I realized something brutal. I was married, but I was alone. And I stayed. Not because I was weak, but because I thought if I just tried harder, I'd earn my place. I cooked, hosted, organized, smiled. I gave everything and shrunk until I was small enough to fit inside their comfort. But some people don't want your best. They want your silence. And that Christmas, that comment, you should have been born a son. That was the moment I stopped being silent. Not with shouting. Not with slamming doors. Just a quiet decision. I would never let these people define my worth again. I didn't tell anyone where I went. No goodbye letters. No dramatic exits. I packed a small suitcase, left the keys on the kitchen counter, and booked a train to a city where no one knew my name. I didn't even use my shared bank card to buy the ticket. I stayed in a rented room for the first month, walked everywhere, ate cheap, designed logos at midnight, and sold them on freelancer sites under a pseudonym. I went quiet on purpose, because sometimes survival starts with stillness. By the third month, I had my first major client, a sustainable clothing brand looking for a full rebrand. I pitched them hard, sent mock-ups before they asked. They signed me on the spot. That one project paid my rent for 6 months. I built a portfolio, a small site, an Instagram account with no personal photos, just clean grids, color theory, and slow, intentional growth. One day, my work got featured by a design blog, then a second, and that's when I noticed something strange. A LinkedIn request from an old mutual contact, someone I hadn't heard from since my wedding. Then a string of passive-aggressive DMs from one of Jacob's cousins. Hey, so random, but love your new designs. Didn't know you were still doing that. Still doing that. They couldn't hide it. They'd seen me. Maybe it was a Google search. Maybe someone sent them a link. But I was on their radar now, not as the girl who brought roasted carrots to Christmas, but as a name that was suddenly making something of herself. A few weeks later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. It was Jacob. His voice was hesitant. Calm. Almost too calm. Hey, just reaching out. Hope you're doing okay. Things have been weird without you. Weird. Not wrong. Not empty. Just weird. He didn't mention the text I never replied to. Didn't mention the silence. Didn't say sorry. But what caught my attention? He ended the message with, also, Mom's been asking about the prenup. There's been talk. I think we should probably discuss it soon. That was the moment everything clicked. They weren't just watching. They were worried. Worried that the woman they treated like a decoration had started building a kingdom of her own. And now, the safety net they'd made me sign, it was keeping them out. So they wanted in. But I wasn't the same woman who used to wait for their approval. And they had no idea what I'd already done to make sure they'd never touch what I built. I didn't panic. I'd lived that way for too long, walking on emotional eggshells, over-preparing for disappointment, second-guessing every sentence that came out of my mouth. But now, I exhaled, and I got organized. The first call I made was to Layla, a lawyer I met through one of my first clients. She was sharp, subtle, and specialized in business contracts and marital asset protection. I told her everything. No sugarcoating. My abrupt exit. The prenup. The voicemail. The silence that turned into surveillance. She didn't flinch. Do you have any assets acquired before marriage? Yes. Anything commingled with your ex? No. We had separate accounts. He insisted on it. Perfect. That's going to work in your favor. Layla pulled the original prenup from public court records. Something Jacob probably didn't think I'd know how to do. What she found made her eyebrows rise. They can't touch a cent, she said. It's airtight. His side requested it, remember? Ironically, it protects you now. I smiled. Of course they had insisted on a prenup. I was the underdog then, the one with nothing to lose. They wanted to ensure their son's tech earnings wouldn't be touched if things went sideways. What they didn't plan for was me becoming the one with more to protect. Next, I moved all my assets into an LLC. One Layla helped me set up. My design contracts, my brand collaborations, the digital assets, all of it, filed under a corporate shell with layers they couldn't easily pierce. Then I updated the business insurance, transferred domain ownership, closed out the last remaining bank account that had ever touched his name. I wasn't just protecting what I had. I was protecting who I had become. A week later, I got another email. This one from a law firm, different from Jacob's last one. The subject line, request for mediation, marital agreement revisions. I forwarded it to Layla. She replied in less than 5 minutes. Let me handle this. She did. What followed was a masterclass in silence. No dramatic replies. No long explanations. Just a formal, legal reminder that the prenup held and all post-separation earnings were separate property, reinforced by statute. They never responded. Not through lawyers, not directly. Because they'd realized two things. I had legal teeth now, and I wasn't afraid to use them. That was the first time I felt truly untouchable. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally had the tools to stand my ground. And now, it was time to return the favor. Not through threats, through something they feared more. Success they couldn't control, and a silence they couldn't manipulate. They didn't come at me through court. They came through family. Aunt Martha, Cousin Elise, even his little sister, who never once said my name at a dinner table, suddenly found my email. Hey, Nina. Long time. We were just talking about how much you meant to all of us. How much I meant. These were the same people who used to make side comments about my simple taste and whispered about how I was lucky Jacob settled down. Now they were sending photos of old birthday parties and quoting inspirational quotes about healing and unity. I didn't respond because I knew what this was. They weren't reaching out because they missed me. They were reaching out because they'd realized what leaving me behind had cost them. Jacob tried again too, this time directly. A quiet voicemail. I know things got out of hand. Maybe we could just meet. Talk. I'm not trying to fight, Nina. I miss who we were. What we were. We were silence and performance. Me holding everything together. Him standing still, watching me carry it. And now that I'd rebuilt my life without him, he wanted access again. But he didn't want me. He wanted the version of me that had no boundaries. And that woman was gone. 2 days later, Layla called. You're going to want to hear this, she said. Apparently, Jacob's legal team had filed a reconsideration on the prenup, quietly, in a different jurisdiction, hoping it would slide through unnoticed. They cited emotional duress and lack of full disclosure, the same agreement they had drawn up, signed, and notarized. Desperate, illegal, and sloppy. Layla had already filed an injunction. They tried to go around you, she said, but they didn't count on you having someone smart in your corner this time. I asked her what would happen next. They'll get a hearing date, but the judge won't like being lied to. I'll take care of it. You don't even have to show up. I did, though. Not because I had to, because I wanted them to see me. I walked into that courtroom in a navy blue blazer I'd bought with my first big payout, hair clean, head high, and heart steady. Jacob looked surprised. His mother looked like she'd swallowed a brick. Their lawyer barely met my eyes. And when the judge ruled that the prenup was valid, enforceable, and had been executed without coercion, in the presence of counsel, it was done. No appeal. No reconsideration. No second chances. Jacob stood up afterward and walked toward me. I didn't flinch. Nina, he said, voice low, you really want to do this? I tilted my head. You already did. Then I turned and walked away. That was the day I stopped surviving and started living on my own terms. They thought I'd fade, but I outgrew them. Quietly, legally, permanently. I didn't hear from them again after the courtroom. Not immediately, not for weeks. But collapse doesn't always arrive with a crash. Sometimes it seeps in like water under the floorboards. Quiet, slow, impossible to stop once it's already inside. It started with a message from Elise, Jacob's cousin. She wasn't pretending anymore. I know things got messy, but Jacob's really not doing well. The company's struggling. He didn't expect all of this. All of this. Like I was a storm. Like I hadn't quietly left everything behind, only to be chased by the very people who wanted me gone. I didn't reply. Then came the news articles. Small ones tucked at the bottom of newsletters. Jacob's startup, the one that once got him tech magazine features and investment round buzz, was bleeding cash. 2 key investors had pulled out. A quiet lawsuit had been filed by a former employee. I didn't smile when I read it, but I didn't feel bad either, because I knew the truth behind the company. He never built it alone. I wrote pitch decks for him back when I was just the wife. Reformatted spreadsheets. Reviewed contracts. Edited investor emails. None of that made it into their narrative. And now, they were watching the narrative unravel. Jacob tried one more time. A letter this time. Handwritten, like a scene from a movie he thought would win me back. He said he was sorry. Said he missed the way I made things calm. Said his mother had always been hard to please, and he should have said something. He said he wanted to talk, start fresh, reconnect. He didn't mention the prenup, didn't mention the lawyer, didn't mention trying to erase my name from our story. Just longing rewritten as regret. I folded the letter once, tucked it in a drawer, and let it be. Because closure doesn't come when the other person finally realizes what they did. Closure comes when you no longer care if they do. Months passed. I built more, signed 2 major clients, launched a new design course, was featured on a podcast about women who rebuilt their lives after being written off. I talked about creative process, boundaries, business structure. I didn't say Jacob's name once. That was the real collapse. Not the money, not the company, but the realization that I had rewritten my story and he no longer had a line in it. His mother eventually sent an email. No subject line. Just one sentence. You've changed. I read it twice, then whispered the truth out loud. No, I just stopped performing. I never thought power would feel this quiet. No applause. No grand reveal. No triumphant, I told you so. Just mornings where I wake up in a space I love, with no one telling me who to be. Just invoices paid on time, clients who respect me, a calendar I control. Freedom isn't loud. It's steady. I moved into a loft last fall, exposed brick, sunlight all day, no furniture I didn't choose myself. For the first time in years, everything in my home reflected me. No compromising on color palettes. No folding myself into someone else's routine. I had Saturday mornings for yoga and farmers markets, Sunday nights for wine and books, Monday afternoons for creation, not survival. I even started mentoring a few young designers. Women in the exact spot I was 5 years ago, brilliant, overlooked, afraid to ask for what they deserve. I told them the things I wish someone had told me. Silence is not peace. Shrinking is not respect. And love that requires you to disappear isn't love at all. They listened. They took notes. And I saw versions of my younger self in all of them. Except this time, she was surrounded by women who wouldn't let her vanish. I was invited to speak at a design conference in April. Keynote speaker, not a panel guest, not a featured up-and-comer. Keynote. I stood behind the podium and looked out at 500 faces. I told the story of starting with no clients, of working in a rented room, of leaving a life that made me small and building one that made space for every inch of who I am. I didn't name names, didn't need to, because the message wasn't about revenge. It was about rebirth. Afterward, I got a text. Blocked number. Just 5 words. You really made it, huh? I deleted it without replying. Because here's the truth. When you finally rise, the people who once stepped on you don't know how to breathe the air you live in now. And they'll try to follow you up, not because they want to grow, but because they think they're still entitled to your view. They're not. Success wasn't my revenge. Healing was. Getting up every day without fear, earning on my own name, saying no without guilt, saying yes without permission. That was the rise. Not the money, not the loft, not the title, but the moment I stopped needing their silence to finally hear my own voice. I kept the apron, the one his mother gave me the first year we were married, beige with tiny embroidered lemons. She handed it to me like a contract, like a symbol. A good wife knows how to take care of a home. For a while, I believed her. I wore that apron through birthdays, holidays, late-night dinners, meals where no one said thank you, but everyone expected seconds. I tied it tighter when I felt invisible, hoping if I served enough, smiled enough, softened enough, I'd matter more. It took me years to realize the truth. They didn't want a wife. They wanted a witness to their version of success, to their rules, to their hierarchy. And when I stopped clapping quietly from the kitchen, I became a threat. So I left. Now, that apron lives in a drawer I never open. Not out of spite, but because I don't need to burn it to prove I've moved on. The fire already happened. It just didn't look the way they expected. Sometimes people ask me if I ever think about Jacob. About them. Not often. But sometimes I wonder who he tells the story to now. Does he say I walked out cold? That I took the money and ran? Or does he leave out the parts where I sat through insult after insult, Sunday after Sunday, wondering when love was supposed to feel like home? Either way, it doesn't matter. Because healing isn't about rewriting the past. It's about living so fully in your present that the past has no breath left. I still get emails from women, clients, viewers, listeners, readers, women who say they saw themselves in a story I told on stage or in a line I wrote online. One of them said, "Your voice gave me mine back." That's the moment I knew I'd truly closed the door behind me. Because now I wasn't just healing, I was helping. Last month, I walked through a bookstore and saw my name on the cover of a new design anthology. A full spread about my brand, my journey, my rebuild. No mention of Jacob. No footnotes about the family who never said my name unless it was followed by criticism. Just me. My story. Unfiltered. Undiminished. Whole. I bought a copy. Not out of vanity, but because I once thought I'd never be more than what they told me I was. Now, I'm everything they couldn't imagine. And finally, I don't need their permission to exist. I never did.